Hello, and welcome to the Pricing for the Planet podcast, the podcast that explores the intersection of business and sustainability. Today I'm super excited because I'm with Ron Giuntini, an expert in remanufacturing. So, Ron, in this podcast, we like to start from the end. So, what would be the key message you want the listeners to remember after this podcast?
Well, again, I've been remanufacturing for 45 years plus and have seen multiple industries from the military to the commercial machine environment. And focusing on that, I'm not talking about consumers, a little different in regards to remanufacturing. But the message I like to live is that remanufacturing has been around for 100 years. All right. It's been used in virtually every single capital equipment marketplace very effectively. And it's a huge business in the United States. It's $100 billion a year business on the spend for employed the spend on the remanufacturing process itself. That's huge. But if you ask most NGOs, most academicians, most politicians, they're clueless on it because they've created their own language, which is strange to me because we've been doing it for 100 years. Why are they recreating a language that exists today in industry? It's a very profitable business. uh, in the United States alone, there's $10 trillion of commercial machines on the balance sheet in American industry, and on an annual basis they spend about $100 billion a year for the remanufacturing processes, which is a lousy 1%
Yeah.
of the installed base. So the potential is huge down the road in regards to expanding this. And again, there's business model after business model been around for 100 years. Actually, the best business model is if people know who Howard Hughes was, an eccentric billionaire of several generations ago. They created the ultimate remanufacturing model. They printed money as a result of that. And his father had a patent for the drill bit for going through solid rock for oil exploration. And the whole program was he never sold his bits. He leased it and remanufactured them on a continuous basis. All right. And that was in 1911, I think. Okay.
Wow.
So, and that's how he made his
Yesterday.
fortune. But anyway, the point is that that's a message. There's huge opportunities, highly profitable, usually 2 to 3 times more profitable and as a profit margin than the selling of products.
Super clear. Thanks, Ron. And maybe let's start with who you are, and maybe a quick reminder of what is remanufacturing in case someone in the audience is not fully aware of what it is.
Well, I've spent my whole career, almost 50 years now, in the whole aftermarket area, from aerospace to construction to computers. And I've worked extensively with the military. The military actually have they're the single largest remanufacturer in the world. United States military, all four services, they spend about probably about $30 billion a year on the remanufacturing of weapon systems. So I've had a lot of experience. Even my MBA was a concentration in logistics, which deals with sustaining any kind of commercial machine. And I've run an aerospace division, and I've done consultings. I've taught. I've done a lot of research. So my whole life's been focused on this. It's sort of like an obsession, and remanufacturing is one of my sub obsessions. All right, but what I want people to remember the most is what is remanufacturing. People use different terms: remanufacturing, overhaul, refurbishment. rebuild. There's a lot of terms, but basically it's a process in which a product is inducted into a process. It's disassembled. Uh, Parts are replaced. They're tested. They're actually cleaned, and the item is reassembled where the reliability of that product and its performance is equal to or better than that of a new product. All right, and that could be, you can include upgrades in there. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do during and it's then reinducted into the supply chain. That's what remanufacturing is.
Super clear. And what's funny, we keep talking about, being more sustainable, greener future for the next generation. And remanufacturing is playing a huge role into this potential greener future. Can you maybe explain why remanufacturing could be a great solution for a more sustainable world?
Well, for example, automobiles, right? Uh, there's actually several models that were designed to be remanufactured that extended the life of an automobile for 30 years. All right. For example, if you're in London, the Leland taxis, the classic taxis, those were actually designed to be remanufactured. And that's why they look, what they do is you put a couple 100,000 kilometers on it, and then it goes into a shop, it's totally disassembled, put back together, upgraded, and upholsteries are all cleaned up, and you re-entered into the taxi fleets. In the U.S., we had Marathon Manufacturing, was the famous checker taxi. The same thing. It was designed. Most of the taxis look brand new, though they were 30 years old. All right, those models around. Can you imagine if we did that in the automobile industry? What the impact would be on a global point of view? It would dwarf the whole concept of EVs, because what you do is you shift, instead of spending 80% on the on materials and automation, you would change everything where you just would disassemble it. It'll all be labor intensive. You wouldn't be using that much materials. So I mean, this is where it drives me crazy, the lack of understanding of the politicians and the academicians, and what could happen if you simply change the business model. All right. All EVs are, it's the same business model. You build,
Yeah.
you buy stuff, you build it, and you launch it, but it's nothing different than the ICE model. All right.
Mm.
So that's where I'm just flabbergasted with the lack of understanding of the world out there.
And Ron, it's 100% aligned with you. One question though, it's because we talked about automotive, industrial equipment. Do you have example of multiple companies and multiple industries which applied remanufacturing successfully?
Virtually every single segment of the commercial machine sector has successfully done it. I'll give
Mm.
you a perfect program. I was working with a large commercial construction machine OEM. All right, we were what we found was that in the past, and they used channels of distribution. So the OEM sold it to a distributor, who then sold it to a construction. But what was finding out that a lot of the construction outfits didn't need to buy the machine full time, so they wanted to rent. So a lot of the distributors, so they bought it from the OEM. Distributors created a daily rental pool and then rented the equipment. The problem was that equipment would get beat up in daily rental pools. So what we did with the OEM, we developed this great exchange program. So the distributors, after a rental unit was used for 3 or 4 years, they would swap it with the OEM with a remanufactured unit, same unit. So we developed a pool. It was very, very successful. That was one. Okay, remanufacturing, for example, in the aerospace industry, they call it overhaul. Same thing.
Mm.
All right. There's only two industries that legal terms for the process of remanufacturing. You have aerospace. It's called overhaul. That's a legal definition. and it's overseen by the aviation authorities. All right, and they call it overhaul, but it's remanufacturing. They bring it back to a like new. It's required by law every X amount of hours or years of usage. So you have that, and you have the atomic plant environment where there's items that have to be overhauled. All right. So they don't even use the term remanufacturing, but it is remanufacturing. It's the same thing. All right. So you have the construction industry is big. About 50% of all new construction machines now are going into daily rental pools. All right.
Yeah.
So you see that in the medical area, they're starting to well, another big user of remanufacturing is the chip manufacturing industry. Okay, like
Mm.
um, uh, the applied materials, for example. They they build this, these machines for to be put into the manufacturing process of making chips. Okay, these are huge fab plants that cost $5-10 billion. Okay, to build, but they have about a 2 year life, 2 3 year life. So what happens is applied materials, after the plant is basically has to be reset for the new technology. All right, those machines are then actually remanufactured, repurposed, and sold to, for example, if the machines were basically focused on making chips for computers, they'll be sold to make chips for toys. All right, they don't need the tolerance. All right, so they remanufacture it. They make a lot of money doing that. It's one of the secrets. One of one of the secrets in industry is you'll never see that in financial statements. It's all hidden by
Mm.
design because they're not required. It gets involved with, I don't know. I read financial statements all the time, and I try to find little areas. But for example, like Cummins engines. Okay, they have a whole remanufacturing program for engines. All right, the engine can be, you as the owner of the engine can send it in. It could be remanufactured and sent back to you. You can buy an engine that's been remanufactured. Okay, or you can exchange an engine. All right, you give me your old engine, I'll give you a remanufactured engine. You swap it. Those are the
Interesting.
three major ways that remanufacturing a remanufactured product enters a specific solution. So it's, I mean, it's all over the place, and we have dozens and dozens, hundreds of different business units of conglomerate. Most OEMs are conglomerates, so they all have that. And in Europe also. I mean, you're starting to see that in Europe, Renault, Stellantis, what's that?
Stellantis, yeah.
Yes, they have remanufacturing centers now. All of them are developing remanufacturing centers. And I wrote a paper for Society of Automotive Engineers about how to convert the auto industry in focused on remanufactured cars, light vehicles, versus selling new. All right,
Mhm.
it's pretty good. It got pretty good reviews. So anyway, so there's a lot of examples.
No, yeah, and what I like, and I think that's where a lot of people are mistaken. It's they think about remanufacturing for planes or cars, but you mentioned, medical industry, nuclear industry,
It's
chips, and I think that's where we need a lot more awareness around remanufacturing, a lot more awareness on remanufacturing related business models. So,
it's you. The biggest remanufacturers are actually engine overhaul.
hmm,
Okay, that's about, in globally, it's probably a $20 billion a year business. 20, but the biggest single one of the single biggest remanufacturers is Caterpillar. They
hmm,
spend they generate about $5 to $6 billion a year in remanufactured products. All right,
yeah,
it's
that's
huge.
impressive.
Okay, in the mining industry, I mean, every single industry does remanufacturing, but you don't hear about it by all the academicians and the politicians. They
Hmm.
don't talk about it. I'm just amazed. It just flabbergasts me. But anyway, life goes on.
No, for sure. And so, quick one for you: if someone or if a company is intrigued by remanufacturing, what would be your advice? Where to start? How can they set up a remanufacturing operation?
Well, first of all, you have to develop a business model, okay, to show the value of remanufacturing. Okay. Now, there's always a conflict because theoretically, remanufacturing takes away from the sale of new products.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've confronted with that for years, and it's very simple to deal with it. Salespeople, all they care about is what their commission's going to be. Okay. What their
Mm.
going to be for themselves. So think about this. If I'm selling $100 machine and I get a 5% commission, okay, $5. But if I'm selling a remanufactured machine for, let's say, $300, for, let's say, $70, which is about the ratio, and I get 5%, that's $3.50 instead of $5. Okay.
Mm.
So what are you going to focus on if you're a salesperson?
Of course, the expensive one.
Okay. So what we didn't, and I've had this problem. So what I've done successfully is I changed it because remanufactured products are 2 to 3 times more profitable than a new product. So what you do is simple. You change the commission rate for remanufactured product instead of having 5%, 10%.
Yeah.
Okay. So now instead of getting $5, they get $7. Okay. All right. On the 10% of the $70. And all of a sudden, things change overnight. All of a sudden, they push remanufacturing.
Yeah, and changing incentive is such an important part of being more sustainable. So fully agree with you.
Yeah, so it's not that hard, but you have to develop a detailed business model with an ability to go in front of leadership, the chief financial officer, marketing heads, because marketing is going to fight it to a certain extent because you're actually reducing revenue, but
Hmm.
revenue is irrelevant because what's relevant is profit, right? All right. Look at all these startups. They tons of revenue, but they make no profit. They lose their shirts all the time. But remanufacturing can be very profitable if you're smart. And the biggest challenge is accounting. Did you know that? Financial accounting. So you can imagine you have a part, got a new condition part for, let's say, $100. You got a overhaul remanufactured part, and you can remanufacture parts, not the whole equipment. That's for $70. You have an item that's just been cleaned up and a couple things done on it, but not remanufactured. That may be worth $50. Then you
Hmm.
have a part that's just been cleaned and is available again. That's $30. Okay. Now, each one of those have different impacts on profitability and how you do that. Most accountants are clueless. They don't know how to deal with that. So what happens is they do stupid things, and there's all kind of accrual accounting. I don't want to get too involved with it because it gets really into the weeds. But uh, a financial accountant will destroy a remanufacturing operation overnight. They just
Interesting.
don't get it. It's all managerial accounting. It's not financial accounting. All right. So that Fabien, there's a lot of issues there, and I've seen entire divisions destroyed by financial accountants. I've seen everything out there. All right. Anyway,
Wow.
it goes on. Okay. Eventually, I'll die before this is all accepted, but it's okay. I'm
I
patient.
hope not. I hope not, Ron. We need to crack that down, very quickly. But to summarize, so you would say key success factor number one is, making sure that the incentives are properly aligned. And challenge number one, it's working with the financial department and accountants to make sure that it's creating value for the company and on the balance sheet as well.
That's exactly right. You have to do both, and they have to be rigorous and tested and sold by the chief financial officer. All right, has to buy, you know, into it.
Okay, yeah, super interesting. And it's strange because I would assume that actually it would be a good news for the CFO because if you think, for me, it was one of the aha moment. I was thinking about remanufacturing, like if you are selling products, so on your balance sheet is of course you have your production assets. But when you are doing remanufacturing, your balance sheet and your assets are, way higher because you get all those assets back, and now the value of your company should be way higher.
Well, then it gets involved with return on assets. Okay, there's a lot of financial metrics that can change, and the CFO is looking at that, especially if it's a publicly held company. All right, so a CFO is not against it as long as you can show they're focused on the profitability. All right, there's the investor community. Then your question is, should you expose the company's financial statements to the investment community in regards to how much you're spending on remanufacturing or how much you're selling remanufacturing? For example, you have several reports now in the United States and in Europe also. You have the financial public company oversight entities. In the United States, we have Security and Exchange Commission. But then you have the annual reports, which has nothing to do with the filings with the government. Okay, that's basically telling people how great you are. Okay,
Yeah.
then you have a sustainability report. Okay, you got three reports. They're not in sync at all. All right. What's important for investors, who are ultimately the people that will push sustainability, there's virtually nothing there. All right. So the investment community doesn't see a lot of this stuff. All right. The annual reports they'll talk about, like Caterpillar, doesn't even, barely mentions it in their Security and Exchange filings. In the annual reports, they talk about how many millions of tons of materials they save. In the sustainability report, they talk about that. But that's really for all the nonprofit people, all the activists who want to get involved with sustainability. But all three reports should be blended together into one so that it's transparent. That's not the case right now. It's not the case. That's a major problem. This whole sustainability effort. I don't like government edicts. Government in Europe, the philosophy is, if there's a law that allows me to do it, I'll do it. In the United States, I'll do whatever I want unless there's a law that limits me.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a different different approach. So in Europe, they'll tend to use government edicts to push this forward. Versus United States, it's a different philosophy.
Super interesting. And Ron, last question, almost like a philosophical question. What is something that most people believe to be true, but your experience suggests otherwise?
Most people are totally ignorant about the profitability of industry. Okay, they're clueless. All right, unless you're in it. I ask people because I meet with family members or whatever, and they talk about profit. Oh, most companies make 50% profit, 60% profit, and I go, you're an idiot. All right, most companies after taxes, especially the capital goods guys, they're keeping maybe $6 to $8 for every $100.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. It's not, it's a hard game. And when there's a recession, they're losing money. Right? Yeah. And they keep on going and they build up some of their debt, and hopefully things will get, better. But what's interesting about remanufacturing is that you're much less recession sensitive than new production. All right. So anyway, that's what most people just they don't teach you in the schools. Most people are ignorant. And I can when I talk to people with family members or whatever, after about 30 seconds they start talking about football. Okay, they're bored. They don't want to get involved. But anyway, that's what I would like to leave most people is dig down, do some deep diving, understand business models that have been out there for a century. All right.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, in the United States, remanufacturing, the Supreme Court, there was one company that was so profitable. It was called the uh, United United Shoe Machinery Company. And what they did was they didn't they remanufactured all their shoe manufacturing machines. All right, and they controlled 95%. They were so profitable because they were so efficient in the remanufacturing of their products. They sold consumables. The Supreme Court busted them in 1953. They were, I mean, the shoe manufacturing industry. Where was the center of shoe manufacturing industry? In Massachusetts, United States,
Yeah.
where they had all the USMC's machines. And the trust at that point, antitrust said, if you're hurting your competition, then we must punish you. All right. Now it's if you're not hurting the consumer,
Yeah.
leave you alone. Okay, that was the model. So anyway, that's what I leave with people. Just you see this, and things are changing, but very very slow. They could change a lot faster if things changed out there.
Perfect. Ron, thank you so much. Where can the audience find you? You mentioned a couple of articles. You wrote a great article in our book, Monetizing and Pricing Sustainability. Can they follow you on LinkedIn? Do you have a
Yeah, I'm on
website?
LinkedIn. Yeah, anytime. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so they
Okay,
could follow me there. And then
perfect.
if they wanted to contact me, they can use a message on there.
All right. So I will make sure I will add in the comment section Ron Giuntini, your LinkedIn profile. And if you want to continue the learning journey with us, you can go on www.pricingfortheplanet.com. We have a free newsletter called the Biweekly Digest, where we talked about all those topics. And a huge thank you again, Ron, for
Okay,
your
sounds great,
expertise.
Fabien. And we could have done this in French, right, Fabien? We could.
Yeah, I try to convince you because I know your French is awesome, but for the audience, I think they might be disappointed in French.
Anyway, all right. Have a great day, and we'll talk later. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Ron.
Bye.